Alright, so we're continuing to work here on this little project that we tilled up. I need to plant some new bent grass here, but before I do that, I need to move and add a sprinkler head back here in the corner. And so I've got a sprinkler head that's right over here that I need to move back about a foot up against the fence because I've got a strip down along my fence line that just doesn't get enough water. And that's because that sprinkler is just out too far. So I'm going to scoot that back and I'm going to add some swing pipe to move a sprinkler head, add over here in the corner. This whole section here has always been a little too dry and the bent grass has been real thin because of it. So before we do any seeding, I want to get all this fixed first, and so that's what we're going to continue to work on today. So if you ever need to do some work on a sprinkler head, the easiest way to handle this is to dig around it in a big circle like this. By doing it this way, you'll be able to keep your grass intact, and you can put everything back together the same way you took it out. It won't look like you were ever here. And it takes a lot less time for this spot to heal. So another good tip is, whenever you're working on a sprinkler head, get you a piece of plywood or cardboard or something to put your dirt on instead of just dumping it over on your grass. Because when you dump all that on your grass, you'll have a kind of a difficult time getting it flat again, because everything kind of breaks up and gets loose. So if you just put everything on that plywood or whatever you got and use that to just, dust it all back into the hole when you're ready, it'll look like you're never here. Everything heals up real nice and these edges go back together the way they should. It just makes for a much cleaner repair job. Well, look at all those roots on that bent grass. Look how deep that is. So with the proper amount of fertilizer and plant growth regulator, you can see how deep it makes those roots grow on that bent grass. So even cool season lawns can get really deep roots like this. Because a lot of times Bermuda grass, it'll grow really deep like that. And you would think, being such a short, low mowed grass like this bent grass is, that the roots would be real shallow. But you can see they go all the way down a good 10 inches or so. So the riser broke off, so that's a bummer. We'll have to flush that line before we put all this back together. So just another little tip I'd give you is, whenever you're working on sprinkler heads, just pay attention to your shovel types. So this is the type of shovel you'd normally use for digging trenches and things for sprinkler lines. But the problem I've run into is with that sharp spike on the tip of it, like that, so many times I have smashed it down into that PVC pipe and cracked it, and then I've got a bigger repair job than I need. Whereas if you take a regular shovel with a rounded nose on it, when you dig, you got a less chance of busting that PVC and creating a lot more work for yourself. So not that these shovels are bad, just you might want to grind the corner or grind the nose off on them a little bit so that they're not so sharp. They dig really well, but they also break a lot of stuff whenever you can't see where that pipe is.
Back up, Dave. It's my turn.
It's your turn? Okay. You got it? Yeah. And there's like some kind of footing here.
Oh, yeah.
What a mess, man. Can't be anything easy. So I just need to move that sprinkler back right about here to get it in line with my fence line over here. But I gotta have enough room to put a T in here for that swing pipeline I was gonna use. So hopefully I can just come back here and cut us a little trench across here, and I can get that sprinkler back over there in that corner like I want to. There's a bunch of old, I don't know, fence post footings or something in here. Seems to be what we're running into. So I gotta be real careful right here. I've got a valve box right here. My main water line comes in right here. So there's a lot of trunk lines that move from this point to the front and the back of the yard. So I've got roots that are just like this, that are just everywhere through here from this oak tree. So what I've got here is this rotor I'm gonna put in back here. So I need to get the top down below surface level. So that's a good 10 or so inches. allow enough room for that swing pipe to come in underneath it as well. So still got a little bit to go, because you don't want this sticking up, because then you end up just weed eating it all the time, or you're going to hit it with the reel. So now's the time to just get it down deep enough so it'll stay where you want it, under the ground. Alright, so I've got this trench dug a little bit here, and came across another sprinkler head over here that I forgot about. It's on another circuit, and it just doesn't do much of anything. Because what's strange about that circuit is the majority of it's on the other side of the house, but there's 2 sprinklers over here in the backyard that are on that circuit. It's just really strange why it was done that way. So I'm actually going to take that one out, and I want to extend that line over to my tree over here and do maybe a little drip line around this tree well. That way flowers and stuff will grow in there, because they just don't get enough water either from the sprinklers. So I'm going to put a little drip line around there. So I think now's a good time to do that. I'll put that drip line on that circuit that does the other side of the house. That's not that important. But this main trench line I've dug here is on a critical circuit that covers the majority of the backyard. So that's why I want that rotor over there in the corner. That way I can make sure all my bent grass is evenly covered, because that's what's important to me back here in this section. So that's going to be our plan. I'm going to keep digging. Hopefully I can get up to this tree well without too much trouble with tree roots, and make a trench for a drip line to go up there. So you can see what I'm talking about. There's just tree roots everywhere. I'm not going to be able to get real deep right here. That's why I'm going to use swing pipe instead of PVC. You know, if you were using PVC, you'd have to get down 8 to 10 inches to get it buried and get it all put together and all that. But a swing pipe's just about a 1/2 inch, maybe 3/4 in diameter. And so it's a lot easier to just kind of run it under the surface in these not so ideal areas. So we're probably about as deep as I'm going to get on this trench without really having to tear up this tree a lot. So I'm just going to leave a shallow trench, put that swing pipe across here, run it up around the bed. Alright, so like I said earlier, I'm using swing pipe for this, and this stuff is just really cool because it's really flexible, especially if you leave it in the sun. It's a lot easier to work with. And so I can make up these couplers and things the way I need them. It allows me to get these sprinklers installed a lot easier than if I did PVC. With PVC, I'd have to cut the couplings out and then use like slip fixes and things like that that are really expensive to put all this and piece it back together. And not only that, I'd have to be, 10 inches deep, which is going to be really hard for me to do here because I've got main trunk lines that run up and down through this area. So I'm going to use swing pipe, move the sprinkler back about 1 foot like I mentioned before. Then I'm going to come off of this T and move it back toward that corner that we dug out earlier. So here's a little tip for the swing pipe. Whenever you go to mate it up with either your 90s or your T's, a natural tendency, let me get one here, is you would think you would take this and you'd got to really work it back and forth to get that to go on there, but you really don't have to do that. So if, like I said, let it sit in the sun for a minute, let it get a little more flexible. Or if you're going to do this during the winter time, use a heat gun, heat this stuff up a little bit. And all you have to do is you put this on your coupling and just work it up and down. And what it does is it starts to scoot over that barb fitting, and it just inches over bit by bit by bit to where it eventually covers that thing up. And you don't have to sit there and do all that twisting motion back and forth to get that on there. So with little to no effort, you can see how easy that makes up, and all you gotta do is just move it up and down. Slide over that hose barb fitting really easy. So this allows me to move all this up and down where I need it, get the sprinkler set for the right height, and all that kind of stuff. So really neat little setup here. So here's a little tip. You can take a hose barb 90 by 1/2 inch male adapter here, or coupling. You can put it on the end of the pipe like that and then put your sprinkler head on top. But if you do that, this is real rigid, and so it's kind of hard to get your sprinkler head to line up and get level. So what you can do is buy a 1/2 inch female coupling by 1/2 inch male 90. And so when you put these together and then put this on the end of your swing pipe like that, it gives you a nice fitting that you can adjust back and forth so that you can get your sprinkler head to sit in there real level the way you need it to. And so with that coupling on there like that, like I say, you can move that sprinkler head back and forth and make up a really good connection. and get it adjusted where you need it to go. With the rotor installation complete, we started working on pulling the tree well apart to finish installing the swing pipe. It took a couple of tries to get the bricks to line back up and the swing pipe to stay in place, but it turned out great. We then backfilled our trench while being intentional about holding the swing pipe down in place. So this part right here, this is what I was talking about. If you dig a circle around your sprinkler head to do your repair, you can put that piece right back in the same way it came out, and it'll be flat and even, and you won't have a big mess to deal with if you do it like that. We got out the Tonka trucks and shovel to backfill the rest of our trenches. The dethatch rake works a lot better than a regular rake to help spread the dirt out and break down the dirt clods. After a really long day, it was finally time to get our new sprinkler head adjusted and call it a night. Alright, so it's about a week later, and I told you I was going to put a little drip line around here with some shrub sprays and things like that, but after looking at that, the parts to do that's going to run about $40 just to get the pressure reducer and things that you need here to do an actual drip line. And so I decided not to do that for just these couple of plants I have here in the tree well. And so, you know, if we were doing a larger flower bed, definitely I would do the shrub sprays and the whole thing to do that the right way. But for this little project here, I just need some water on these plants. And so I'm going to use the bubblers because I already had them on hand and I already had the parts. So I'm just going to add a couple here and choke those bubblers down real tight. That way they just put out a little bit of water at a time. And that ought to be really sufficient for what we're doing here. And so I'm going to cut this down and make this line where we can bury it, because you really don't want this swing pipe to be sitting out in the sun. It's not intended to. It's just like any other rubber. If you do that, it's just going to rot and deteriorate over time. So I'm going to redo this and cut it to where we can bury it, and then just have a little bubbler sticking up for watering this little tree well area here. So what my plan is use these tees. I'm going to use a couple of tees and have some swing pipe come off to another connection here to put that bubbler up here in between these plants. And that ought to make this pretty easy to do. But this stuff is really easy to use. It's so nice to be able to just move the sprinkler head where you need it to go without having to dig everything up excessively and then add in, you know, all these different couplings for PVC. The swing pipe is just really simple for moving a few things around. So normally I wouldn't use bubblers, but like I said, it's what I had on hand. So I just put one on top of one of those barb 90 fittings, and I'm just going to set them up here in between these plants. So I've let this hose sit in the sun a little bit, and that lets it become a little more flexible. So you can see what I'm talking about. All you have to do is just wiggle that back and forth, and you can see how it just inches on to that coupling with little to no effort. And then you've got a good connection that won't come off. So I'm just going to use a 1/2 inch cap here at the end. You know, I could kink this back and put the steel wire around it again like I did a minute ago, but the reason I don't want to do that is living in West Texas, I irrigate at night. That way the water doesn't evaporate in the mornings as much, and it keeps the ground and the putting green from developing disease from watering in the morning and things like that. And so I don't want to take a chance of this coming apart or leaking or cracking because it's kinked and I don't know about it. So that's why I'm just going to go ahead and put this connection on here with the cap, just to give me a little assurance that it's not going to cause a big mess in the middle of the night and waste a whole lot of water in the process. Lastly, I buried the swing pipe to not only make it look better, but to protect it from the sunlight. So I think it's going to wrap this little project up. Swing pipe is definitely a way to go if you need to move a couple of sprinklers around. I've got several and some weird places in this lawn that they'll be 3 or 4 foot away from an edge of the lawn or something. So I've still got a few things I need to move around and fix, and think swing pipe's definitely the way to go. It's quick and easy. All you gotta do is dig down, find your inlet for your sprinkler head, and add on all these hose barb fittings, and then run your swing pipe to wherever it is you need to go. An observation I've made on this project is if you're going to put swing pipe down, one is don't use it for your main sprinkler system. That's not the way you want to install one, but for fixing items this is a good one. But the other thing is the depth. You know, you don't have to be very deep with this product, but something to think about is if you're ever going to aerate with tines, think about those going down into the ground about 6 inches. So anytime you do anything like that, you need to be mindful of that. So it'd be best to get that pipe down, you know, a good 10 inches or so. That way in the future, any kind of renovation you do on the lawn, whether it's tine aerate or anything like that, you're not going to stab a hole into this hose. Anyway guys, I hope that this gave you a few tips and tricks on how to use swing pipe, and hopefully it'll help you out down the road when you're in a fix trying to get some stuff moved around in your lawn. But I think it's going to do it for this one, guys. We'll see you in the next one.